pregnant wife sold one painting. The millionaire and mistress didn't know it held their secrets. Rain pattered against the window as Charlotte pressed her hand against her growing belly, her eyes drifting toward the single painting she cherished most, a mysterious portrait whose value she never truly understood. In the dim glow of the evening light, the image captured both her hopes and her regrets. Little did she know that she was about to set in motion a chain of events far more explosive than she ever could have imagined. By selling that painting to ease her mounting financial burdens, Charlotte would unlock long-buried secrets of a powerful millionaire and his alluring mistress. The consequences would soon be impossible to escape. Charlotte Armstrong had never felt more alone. She was pregnant 5 months along, and, despite the excitement that a new life often brought, she had lost the warmth and security of a nurturing home. The once beautiful house she shared with her husband, Leonard Aston, was now cold and unwelcoming. The echoes of their arguments bounced off the walls, lingering in the corners where love used to reside. Leonard, a man of 42, had come from modest beginnings, but had ascended in social circles with tenacity and intelligence. He was the type of person who, upon entering a room, commanded attention through his quiet confidence. When Charlotte first met him at a charity gala for the Holloway Foundation, hosted to help underprivileged children, she had been struck by his stoic nature. She saw a lonely soul behind his poised demeanor and believed she could soften the edges of his heart. And for a time she did. That night, he had delivered a rousing speech about philanthropy, citing personal inspirations such as the late Theodore Jacobs, an obscure painter who once dedicated his craft to support orphans in impoverished regions. It had warmed Charlotte's heart, and in their conversation afterward, she discovered that Leonard had grown up in foster care, harboring deep empathy for struggling families. She had admired him for that, for wanting to improve the lives of others in ways he was never afforded. Yet as Leonard's business ventures soared, particularly after he formed a lucrative partnership with technology mogul Damian Wood, his philanthropic spirit took a backseat to relentless ambition. Late-night phone calls, undisclosed business trips, and countless secret meetings became more frequent. Charlotte, naive at first, interpreted his distance as the price of success. She did not fathom the emotional chasms that would soon separate them, or the possibility that she was not the only woman in his life. Charlotte's personal finances suffered because she was no longer receiving the loving attention nor the financial support she once did from Leonard. This left her feeling stranded. Her close friend, Kathleen Gray, had tried to help her with small loans and counsel, but Charlotte refused to rely on charity from a friend. Her pride simply wouldn't allow it. All the while, the monthly expenses kept piling up: hospital bills for prenatal checkups, house mortgage payments, and more. The new life she carried inside her felt more like an anchor pulling her downward into a sea of debt and despair. Leonard's retreat into secrecy reached its breaking point the day he returned from a supposed conference in Paris. Charlotte, who had meticulously prepared a candlelit dinner to share an ultrasound image with him, watched in dismay as he paid no attention to the meal or the photograph. Over dinner, he picked at his food and mumbled about business deals. She observed that he seemed drawn inward, distant in his own thoughts. When she inquired about the conference, his half-hearted replies reeked of evasion. He ended the conversation by leaving the table early and disappearing into his study, door locked behind him. Weary, Charlotte gently placed the ultrasound printout on the dining room table. A single tear escaped her eye and smudged the tiny black and white image, which she had cradled in excitement for weeks. If only she had known how to reach him again, to reconnect with the man who once held her so tenderly, but that man seemed to have vanished. In the corner of the living room hung a painting that had been in Charlotte's family for generations, a portrait of a young woman with haunting green eyes, her expression shimmering with both sorrow and unspoken defiance. Charlotte's late grandmother, Isadora Baird, had once told her that the painter was none other than Theodore Jacobs, the philanthropic artist Leonard had mentioned long ago. According to family law, Jacobs had embedded cryptic symbols into certain paintings, which were rumored to conceal letters, diaries, and occasionally secrets about powerful families who had commissioned him. Growing up, Charlotte never fully believed the rumors, though she cherished the painting for sentimental reasons. Her grandmother had insisted that if ever Charlotte found herself in dire financial need, she should sell this heirloom. So Charlotte left it hanging on the wall, hoping she would never have to part with it. But times had changed drastically. She could feel the weight of her grandmother's words more than ever. One afternoon, while Leonard was in another of his mysterious business meetings, Charlotte received a call from her bank. Her checking account was nearly overdrawn without immediate payments. She would risk eviction or loss of property. Stepping into the living room, she ran her fingers along the frame of the painting, reflecting on its family history. She had no other valuable possessions. Her jewelry collection was modest. The furniture was mostly bought on Leonard's dime. Only this painting, if its rumored authenticity could be confirmed, might fetch a significant sum. Tears welled in her eyes. Letting go of the painting meant closing a chapter of her family's legacy, but desperation overshadowed nostalgia. She reluctantly resolved to contact an appraiser. Charlotte scoured the internet for reputable art appraisers and landed upon the name Miriam Hawkins, a specialist in 19th century and early 20th century paintings. Hawkins was widely acknowledged for her discerning eye in attributing works to lesser-known artists, especially if the pieces had philanthropic backstories or intriguing provenances. Upon reaching out, Charlotte was surprised at how quickly Miriam responded. The appraiser, in a polite yet eager tone, agreed to visit Charlotte's home the next day. When Miriam arrived, she emanated a calm assuredness that helped Charlotte quell her nerves. The appraiser's gaze swept across the living room until it came to rest on the painting of the woman with green eyes. She approached with almost reverent steps. After donning a pair of white gloves, Miriam carefully removed the piece from the wall and placed it on a table for closer inspection. "Astounding," Miriam murmured, her voice trembling with excitement. The signature in the corner, although partially obscured, matched the style and brushwork associated with Theodore Jacobs. "I can confirm this is an authentic Jacobs painting, but let me look closer." As she examined the edges of the frame and the backside of the canvas, a puzzlement crossed her features. Charlotte noticed but didn't speak, afraid of breaking Miriam's concentration. The older woman pinched her lips into a thin line, her hands delicately tracing the edges of the painting, as though it held a secret compartment. Then she paused. "This is quite extraordinary," Miriam said, leaning back and looking at Charlotte. "It's known that Jacobs sometimes inserted letters or hidden writings between the canvas and its backing. I can't be certain if it's the case here, but there's a slight irregularity in the thickness. I'd need permission to remove the backing to confirm." Charlotte hesitated. The painting was precious, and any damage, physical or otherwise, would reduce its value, but her curiosity overcame her apprehension. She nodded. Miriam smiled reassuringly. With gentle care, she began loosening the nails that held the frame's backing in place. As each nail came free, Charlotte's heartbeat quickened. Slowly, Miriam lifted the frame's backing. A folded parchment, crisp around the edges, slipped onto the table. They both paused, eyes wide. Miriam reached for the document, but Charlotte stopped her hand. She took a deep breath, then picked up the folded parchment herself. Carefully, she opened it. Written in swirling cursive script were names, numbers, and references to transactions involving an entity called Hargrave and Sons. Lines of coded text also appeared. Something that looked like a ledger detailing massive sums of money transferring between unidentified accounts. At the bottom, a signature, Theodore Jacobs. "What is this?" Charlotte whispered, her voice shaking. Miriam exhaled slowly. I have no idea, but it looks like a record of financial dealings or secrets connected to someone from that era. The mention of Hargrave and Sons is interesting. That was an old banking firm rumored to handle discreet transactions for wealthy patrons. If Jacobs recorded it, he must have been aware of something significant and potentially scandalous about the painting's commissioners. Charlotte's mind spun. Could these documents be valuable, or worse, dangerous? Her curiosity was overshadowed by an urgent thought. She needed money. The painting alone, authenticated, would fetch a hefty price. Add to it the intrigue of a hidden parchment, and the piece's value might skyrocket. Miriam confirmed that interest among collectors for Jacobs's hidden writings was at an all-time high. Yet the question gnawed at her. Could these hidden records bear any relevance to her present life? Why did her grandmother insist on keeping the painting? She had always brushed it off as mere family lore. Now, she wasn't so certain. After discussing the painting's approximate value easily enough to cover Charlotte's debts and hospital expenses, with a significant surplus, she and Miriam scheduled a formal appraisal event at an upcoming auction house in the city. Miriam left, promising to handle the auction process. Charlotte stood by the table, painting in one hand, hidden parchment in the other. She hoped she was making the right decision. The auction was to be held at a prestigious house known for dealing in rare collectibles and valuables, Rutherford and Company. The day of the event, Charlotte arrived feeling both anxious and excited. She wore a simple black dress, her baby bump more evident than ever. At her side was Kathleen Gray, who refused to let her friend face this monumental moment alone. Inside the opulent lobby, Charlotte noticed a swirl of well-dressed individuals examining different pieces. Mingling among them were wealthy socialites and art aficionados, eager to catch a glimpse of rumored rarities. The Jacobs painting, with its hidden parchment, had created buzz before even reaching the auction block. Journalists and bloggers whispered about it, snapping pictures from afar. Charlotte felt a renewed wave of nervousness. She tried to remember she was doing this for the financial security of her unborn child. Before the proceedings began, Miriam Hawkins introduced Charlotte to a few potential buyers. One was a reserved yet authoritative woman named Helena March, an international collector with a penchant for philanthropic-themed art. Another was Mr. Oliver Grant, a prominent figure in the shipping industry with a rumored interest in 19th-century conspiracy-laden works. And then, at the last minute, someone else arrived, an elegant woman with dark hair, dressed in a sleek burgundy gown. Her name tag read, Amelia Delacroix. Charlotte couldn't explain it, but something about Amelia's demeanor made her uneasy. The woman circled around the painting, her eyes studying it in a calculating way. She inquired with Miriam about the hidden parchment, a note of tension in her otherwise silky, smooth voice. Amelia then noticed Charlotte from across the room, smiled ever so slightly, and walked away. Charlotte shivered. She had never seen this woman before, yet the encounter left her unsettled. Moments later, the auction began. The Jacobs painting came up for bid within the first hour. The auctioneer, regally dressed in a tailored suit, introduced the piece and highlighted its unique story, a hidden parchment, a philanthropic painter, rumored secrets. The opening bid soared far above the initial estimates. The room seemed captivated, paddles rising at an astonishing rate. Charlotte looked to Kathleen, heart pounding. Suddenly, Amelia Delacroix joined the bidding. Each time another buyer raised the price, Amelia countered without hesitation, her eyes locked on the painting. After a fierce battle, Amelia's final bid, so large it made Charlotte's knees tremble, silenced the room. The auctioneer's gavel struck down. Sold to Miss Amelia Delacroix. Charlotte was flush with relief and astonishment. The painting, along with its hidden secret, had garnered a sum beyond her wildest dreams. enough to clear all debts, secure a future for her child, and maybe even start anew. She couldn't believe it. Kathleen hugged her tightly. Yet, beneath that momentary euphoria, an undercurrent of dread flowed. Why did Amelia Delacroix want the painting so badly? And who exactly was she? The day after the auction, Charlotte's phone rang incessantly. Journalists wanted statements, bloggers clamored for an exclusive interview, and collectors extended invitations to dinner or cocktails, possibly hoping to glean more inside information. Overwhelmed, she let most calls go to voicemail. Financial relief was within grasp, but she was in no mood for the spotlight. By afternoon, she received a single text message that made her heart skip a beat. "We need to talk. Leonard is in trouble." Amelia Delacroix had her number. Panic surged through Charlotte. How did Amelia know Leonard? And why on earth would this woman, who had just purchased her family's painting, suggest something ominous about her husband? Her hands trembled as she typed a reply. "Why? How do you know Leonard?" Amelia responded with an address to a discreet cafe and a time, 3:00 p.m. that afternoon. No further explanation. Charlotte was torn between caution and curiosity. She weighed the risk of ignoring it, but something told her that Amelia Delacroix held important information. Maybe it had to do with the painting's hidden parchment. Maybe it involved the secrets Jacobs had documented. And then there was Leonard's own suspicious behavior. Despite her better judgment, she decided to meet Amelia. The cafe was tucked away in a quaint historic district of the city. With her heart racing, Charlotte walked in exactly at 3:00 p.m. The interior smelled of freshly ground coffee beans and honey pastries. She spotted Amelia seated at a corner table by a large window, dressed now in a simple black blouse and slim skirt, projecting understated elegance. A mysterious tension clung to her like perfume. Charlotte approached cautiously. Amelia gestured for her to sit. They regarded each other in silence for a moment, before Amelia broke it with a direct statement. "Leonard and I have been involved for over a year." Time seemed to slow, leaving Charlotte breathless. She felt a sharp pain pierce her chest, though part of her had suspected an affair. Tears threatened to surface, but she clenched her fists beneath the table. She couldn't let Amelia see her crumble. Amelia continued, her tone unwavering. "He told me he was unhappy, that you and he had grown distant. He also implied you two had separated. I only learned a month ago that you're still married. And then I discovered you're pregnant. Does Leonard know I'm pregnant?" Charlotte asked in a shaking voice, anger and hurt swirling within her. She had told Leonard numerous times, but did he pay attention? "Yes," Amelia replied, her eyes flickering with discomfort. "He knew. He told me he didn't want children. At least not right now. He said it was a mistake, an accident." Charlotte felt a fresh wave of heartbreak. So that was how Leonard saw the baby. A mistake. She bit back sobs, choosing to channel her pain into quiet resolve. "I asked you here because of the painting," Amelia said, producing a black folder from her handbag. "The hidden parchment might be connected to something bigger. Leonard's finances are complicated. I've seen certain documents in his office that reference shell companies, questionable partners, and a hush fund." Charlotte's eyes widened. "A hush fund?" Amelia nodded, her gaze earnest. "I can't pretend I'm innocent. My relationship with Leonard began as purely physical, an affair. But I started caring for him, for the man beneath the ruthless entrepreneur facade. A month ago, I uncovered a set of files in his desk. They mention Hargrave and Sons. The same name was on the hidden parchment, right?" Charlotte felt the memory strike her like a bolt. Yes, the hidden parchment indeed mentioned Hargrave and Sons, a banking firm from decades ago. "That's impossible," she said, shaking her head. "Hargrave and Sons shut down generations ago. It was associated with wealthy families from a bygone era. Why would Leonard be involved with them now?" "I wish I knew," Amelia replied. But the painting and the parchment are connected to Leonard's secrets. That's why I wanted it. I thought it might reveal what he's hiding and how I fit into it. Charlotte realized, then and there, she'd stepped into a world of intrigue far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Her unborn child's future hung in the balance. She needed answers. And somehow, it seemed, the painting she'd just sold and the woman who bought it were the keys to unraveling Leonard's tangled web of deception. Later that evening, Charlotte confronted Leonard as he returned home. Standing in the living room, arms folded protectively over her belly, she demanded an explanation. "Tell me about Hargrave and Sons," she said, voice trembling. "Tell me about Amelia Delacroix." Leonard's face fell into a mask of shock and then quickly hardened into anger. "How do you know that name? And what does Amelia have to do with you?" Charlotte swallowed. "I sold the painting. The buyer was Amelia. She told me about you too. Everything." Leonard swore under his breath, his emotions churning just beneath the surface. For a brief second, Charlotte saw shame flicker in his eyes, but it vanished too quickly. He placed his briefcase on the table and ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. "I'm sorry," he said in a clipped tone. "I never meant to hurt you." Charlotte waited, arms still folded. Leonard continued, "Amelia was supposed to be a temporary distraction, but I didn't want to leave you, not until I figured out how to stabilize the business. Things have been complicated." "My partnerships aren't as straightforward as you think." She pressed him. "Complicated how? Does it have to do with the hush fund Amelia mentioned?" Leonard froze, every line in his posture screaming tension. "I see she's been telling you quite a bit." He swallowed hard, stepping closer, voice dropping. "Look, everything I'm doing, this entire charade, is for a greater good. The hush fund is for certain, deals that I've made with international investors. If word leaks, it could cost me everything. Our house, the business, my reputation, and it might cost you too." "Me?" Charlotte echoed, feeling genuine alarm. He nodded grimly. "They know I have a wife. They know I have a child on the way. If I fail to deliver on these deals, there could be serious consequences. These men don't operate within the confines of the law. They can be ruthless." Tears burned behind Charlotte's eyes. "Why didn't you tell me? Why have you kept me in the dark?" Leonard's shoulders slumped, as though momentarily stripped of his bravado. "I didn't know how. And I thought by having Amelia on my side, I could negotiate with them more effectively. She has connections I needed, but it got out of hand. I'm sorry." She wanted to scream, to rage at him for his betrayal. Instead, she forced herself to think about the bigger picture. "So you're saying we're in danger?" He nodded, pained. "Potentially, yes. If the secrets behind Hargrave and Sons, whatever Amelia is chasing, fall into the wrong hands, it might threaten powerful people who won't hesitate to remove threats." Charlotte stared at him. Her sense of betrayal, humiliation, and fear merged into a single knot in her chest. Protecting her unborn child now took precedence over everything. She realized that the painting, the one lifeline she had, was no longer in her possession, but the hidden parchment still existed. Miriam Hawkins had scanned a digital copy of it for archival and appraisal records. Perhaps that was the crucial piece. Without another word, Charlotte turned and walked away, heading upstairs to her bedroom, leaving Leonard alone with the weight of his confession. This was only the beginning. As the complexities mounted, Charlotte found solace in her trusted friend Kathleen Gray. They met in Kathleen's cozy apartment overlooking a small lake. The reflection of sunlight off the water brought a temporary calm to Charlotte's turmoil. Charlotte recounted everything: the painting sale, Amelia's revelations, Leonard's partial confession. Kathleen listened intently, her face shifting from shock to anger to concern. Finally, she sipped her tea, eyes narrowed. "I need to be honest with you, Char," Kathleen said. I wasn't just helping you because you're my friend. I was helping because I suspected Leonard was entangled in something dangerous. I've had my own run-ins with people from that realm." Charlotte frowned. "What do you mean?" Kathleen sighed, setting her cup down. "Remember last year, when I disappeared for a few weeks and said I was visiting family out of state? That was only part of the truth. I had been subpoenaed as a witness in a financial scandal that involved a friend of mine, Tyler Hughes. He had dealings with foreign investors and a shady banking network that turned out to have historical ties to Hargrave and Sons. They used a labyrinth of shell companies to launder money." Charlotte's breath caught in her throat. "Are you serious? So Hargrave and Sons isn't defunct?" She nodded. "Legally, it ceased operations generations ago, but an underground version still thrives, operated by unscrupulous descendants of the original bankers. They handle enormous sums for a variety of clients, some legitimate, some not. Tyler discovered this too late, and he paid the price. He's in federal prison, a cold dread coiled in Charlotte's stomach. The name that appeared in Jacobs's hidden parchment was likely an early iteration of this same corrupt banking network. The more she learned, the more it dawned on her that Leonard might be in way over his head. Kathleen patted Charlotte's knee. "You're not alone in this. We'll figure it out. But you have to be prepared for the possibility that Leonard's predicament is bigger than just an affair or a business dispute." Charlotte nodded, her voice trembling. "I need to protect my baby." She and Kathleen devised a plan, gather more information, ascertain how far Leonard had fallen into the quagmire of Hargrave and Sons. If necessary, they would go to the authorities. The biggest missing piece was the content of the hidden parchment, which might hold clues that could unravel the labyrinth of secrets. Charlotte arranged a meeting with Miriam Hawkins at Rutherford and Company, hoping to obtain the digital scans of the parchment. Miriam welcomed her warmly in her private office. After some small talk, she handed Charlotte an envelope containing a USB drive. "These are high-resolution scans," Miriam said. "You'll see that the ledger references multiple transactions. I also discovered some personal notes scribbled in the margins by Theodore Jacobs. It seems he was approached by the commissioner of the painting to hide or document these transaction ledgers, possibly to blackmail them in the future. But Jacobs had a conscience. He references a family that was wronged, though the details are murky." Charlotte thanked Miriam, her heart pounding with anticipation. She walked out into the daylight, envelope clutched tightly. If she could decode Jacobs's scribbled notes, maybe she could find a path out of this nightmare. Before she could leave the building, a male voice called her name from behind. She turned to see a middle-aged man in a crisp suit, a polite smile on his face. "Pardon me," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Adrian Holloway. I work with certain philanthropic organizations that deal with recovered artworks. I've taken an interest in your painting's backstory." Charlotte shook his hand tentatively. The mention of Holloway piqued her interest. She recalled that name from the foundation event where she'd first met Leonard. Could Adrian be related to that philanthropic group? "I just sold the painting," she said. "I'm sorry, but I don't have it anymore." He nodded politely. "I'm aware, but the secrets behind it fascinate me. If, by any chance, you still have knowledge of the painting's hidden documents, I'd be grateful for a conversation. We at the Holloway Foundation have old records that might help decipher them. You see, my ancestor was once entangled with the Hargrave and Sons network. We've spent decades trying to rectify the damage they caused." Charlotte felt a surge of hope. A philanthropic organization with ties to the Hargrave and Sons fiasco might be exactly what she needed. She gave Adrian her number and promised to be in touch. That night, Charlotte and Kathleen huddled around the glow of a laptop in Kathleen's living room. They inserted the USB drive and opened the high-resolution images. The text was indeed cryptic, referencing account numbers, sums in multiple currencies, and even official stamps from banks in Geneva, London, and Hong Kong. In the margins, Theodore Jacobs had written commentary. Commissioner insisted I keep these ledgers private, threatened me. Hargrave and Sons is not defunct. Their power extends beyond one continent. A certain Aston family stands to profit from this arrangement. Morally wrong, the painting will hold their guilt. Charlotte's heart pounded when she read the line referencing an Aston family. Her maiden name was Armstrong, so Jacobs likely wasn't referencing her, but Aston was Leonard's surname. Could this ledger be referencing Leonard's ancestors or the men he currently dealt with? "He's an Aston," Kathleen whispered. So the shadow of Hargrave and Sons might go back generations in his family. Charlotte felt waves of confusion and fear. Did Leonard's father or grandfather also engage in shady deals with Hargrave and Sons? Was her husband continuing a family legacy of corruption? Tears threatened again. She pressed her lips together, determined not to let them flow. Her child's future meant she had to remain strong. They took screenshots, noted as much as they could, then printed some of the pages. Kathleen's contact from her past legal entanglements, a lawyer named Brandon Faulkner, might be able to guide them on how to use this information. He had once helped protect her in the Tyler Hughes case. This time, they hoped he could help Charlotte. They decided to consult him the next morning. That same night, as Charlotte returned to her house still uncertain if she should remain living under the same roof as Leonard, she found him pacing in the living room. He looked disheveled, eyes bloodshot, tie loosened. On the coffee table lay a half-empty glass of whiskey. "Where were you?" Leonard demanded, pointing a shaking finger at her. Charlotte tried to control her breathing. "That's my business. Don't you have secrets of your own?" He threw his head back, exhaling with frustration. "Amelia called me. She said you're rummaging around in things you don't understand, stirring up trouble with the painting. That painting should have just been sold and forgotten. Why can't you let it go?" "Because it involves you, me, our child," Charlotte snapped. "And apparently it involves your family legacy. Theodore Jacobs wrote about an Aston family in his hidden ledger. Does that mean your father was part of this too?" Leonard's face paled, his lips parted, searching for words. "You don't know what you're talking about," he sputtered at last. "This is bigger than you realize," she sighed, rubbing her temples. "Enlighten me." He sank into the couch, weary. "My grandfather was heavily involved in a banking scandal tied to Hargrave and Sons. It ruined countless families. The fiasco was covered up by the powerful men who profited. I only found out about it recently, when I was approached by a group that threatened to reveal my family's past if I didn't participate in certain deals. I was cornered. They demanded money in exchange for silence. I tried to gather the funds. That's what the hush fund was for, but it became a cycle of extortion." Charlotte's anger flared. "So you risked everything, including your marriage, to hide your grandfather's mistakes." Leonard looked away, unable to meet her gaze. "I did what I thought was necessary to protect my legacy, to protect you, and yes, I kept Amelia by my side because she had connections to these men. She promised to help me navigate their demands. But I realize now how foolish I've been." Silence hung in the air. Leonard's remorse seemed genuine, but his betrayal still stung. Charlotte felt her resolve harden. "I want out," she said, voice shaking with emotion. "I want out of this nightmare. I'm going to see a lawyer tomorrow, someone who understands these financial crimes and can protect me and the baby." Leonard stood, half stumbling toward her. "You'll only put yourself in greater danger." She shook her head. "No, you already did that for me." With those words, she retreated upstairs, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Early the next morning, Charlotte and Kathleen visited Brandon Faulkner at his modest law firm. The attorney, a bespectacled man in his late 30s, with an aura of quiet confidence, welcomed them into his office. After glancing through the documents, he looked troubled. "This is serious," Brandon said, leaning back in his chair. "If these ledgers are accurate, it could implicate multiple parties in historical and ongoing fraud, potentially blackmail, money laundering, even racketeering. The Hargrave and Sons references stand out. They've been the focus of sporadic investigations for decades, but no one has ever pinned them down." Kathleen pressed further. "So what do we do?" "Charlotte just wants to protect herself and her unborn child." Brandon laced his fingers together. "You have a couple of options. One, we can contact the authorities, specifically the white-collar crime division of the FBI. However, that will draw immediate attention. Two, you can take these documents to a reputable investigative journalist, but that also puts you in the crosshairs of whoever is behind Hargrave and Sons. Three, you can attempt a private negotiation with them, but I strongly advise against it. They're not known for fairness." Charlotte's mind swirled with the weight of each option. The idea of stepping into a public investigation made her stomach churn, but the thought of burying the truth, of leaving Hargrave and Sons free to exploit more people, felt equally wrong. "I need time to think," she whispered, tears threatening to spill. "I can't make such a big decision on the spot." Brandon agreed to hold the digital copies securely. "Take your time, but not too long. These kinds of secrets have a way of leaking, and when they leak, people get hurt." Leaving the law office, Charlotte found her phone vibrating non-stop with texts from Amelia. She showed the messages to Kathleen. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. If you go public, you'll regret it." Another followed. "Meet me at the Hargrave Club tonight at 8. We'll settle this quietly." Charlotte's heart pounded. She recalled that the Hargrave Club was an exclusive membership club downtown, rumored to be a front for high society dealings. She typed back, "Why should I trust you?" The reply was immediate. "Because we both care about Leonard." That gave Charlotte pause. Did Amelia truly care about him, or was she simply trying to salvage her own involvement in this labyrinth of criminality? Night descended, and Charlotte, against Kathleen and Brandon's cautious advice, decided to meet Amelia at the Hargrave Club. She arrived in a simple black overcoat, her pregnant belly impossible to hide. The building itself exuded wealth: marble pillars, gold trim, hushed corridors. A concierge escorted her to a private room. Inside, Amelia stood by a glowing fireplace, arms folded. A single chair faced her. Charlotte approached slowly, her eyes flicking around for potential threats. The air smelled of expensive leather and vintage scotch. "You came," Amelia said, her voice neutral. Charlotte nodded, maintaining distance. "What do you want from me?" Amelia took a breath. "I want the original parchment. I know you have scans, but I need the real thing." Charlotte hesitated. "It was sold with the painting. You have it." Amelia shook her head. "The auction house gave me the painting, but apparently withheld the physical parchment for search and authentication. And now word is, it's in your possession or your appraiser's." Charlotte stayed silent, remembering Miriam's procedure. She realized that the original parchment might still be with Rutherford and Company, or had been returned to her in some capacity. She wasn't entirely sure. Amelia's voice dropped lower, stepping forward. "Look, you have to understand. Leonard is in danger. If these secrets about Hargrave and Sons become public, the men controlling this organization will retaliate. They'll punish anyone associated with the painting, even me." Charlotte's anger flared. "So your solution is to keep covering it up?" "I'm trying to protect Leonard," Amelia replied, her tone rising. "Yes, I care about him more than you might believe, and I know you do too. That's why we should work together." Charlotte's skepticism remained. What if the only way to free Leonard is to expose everything? Amelia's eyes flickered. "I can't force you, but I urge you to consider the consequences. Once this is out, there's no going back. Those men will come for you, for Leonard, for your child. Unless we handle it quietly, in a way that ensures our safety. You mean hush money? Amelia said nothing, but her silence spoke volumes. Charlotte felt a sense of moral revulsion at the idea of playing into more extortion, yet fear for her baby's life gnawed at her resolve. Suddenly, the door burst open. Leonard stepped inside, face drawn, eyes darting between Charlotte and Amelia. "We have a problem," he said breathlessly. "Someone leaked rumors that the original parchment still exists. My phone is blowing up with threats. They want it, or there will be dire consequences." The tension in the room skyrocketed. Amelia and Charlotte exchanged glances of alarm. If the rumor was out, then they had lost any advantage they might have held. The next move could determine everything. They moved to a quiet corner in the private lounge, away from prying ears. For the first time, the three of them, husband, wife, and mistress, found themselves united in a single cause: survival. Leonard pressed them. "We can't trust the authorities to keep this under wraps. Hargrave and Sons has people everywhere. We need a plan." Charlotte swallowed, eyes locked on the man who once vowed to cherish her. "I talked to a lawyer who said that if we go public, we can ask for protection." "Protection only goes so far," Amelia countered. "These men operate internationally. Witness protection might not save you in the long run. They have resources far beyond anything you can imagine." Leonard rubbed his temples, exhaustion evident. "I'm willing to pay them off one last time if it means protecting you two and the baby. But we'll need to destroy the parchment or get rid of it." Charlotte shook her head, anger slicing through her. "I can't keep being a pawn in your hush money schemes. My grandmother's painting was used to hide these secrets for a reason. Maybe Jacobs wanted them exposed." Silence followed. Amelia looked at Leonard. He stared at the floor. Charlotte felt a flicker of conscience. If she turned over the parchment, she would become complicit in concealing crimes. If she exposed it, she risked the lives of herself and her child. In the end, Leonard spoke. "We'll decide tomorrow. Until then, stay safe, both of you." Charlotte left the Hargrave Club with questions swirling. The line between right and wrong had never felt so blurred. Unable to sleep, Charlotte found herself drawn to the only place that felt comforting: her grandmother Isadora's old home, which now stood empty since her passing. She had a key, having inherited the property. The dusty air smelled of memories. She wandered the halls, eventually settling on a worn couch in the living room. She recalled her grandmother's stories whispered late at night about how a wealthy baron once commissioned a painting from Theodore Jacobs, then threatened the artist's life when Jacobs learned too much. Could that baron have been an ancestor of Leonard's? A wave of sadness engulfed her, tears flowing freely at the thought that the man she loved might be tethered to a legacy of cruelty. She glanced at old photo albums, discovering one from her grandmother's wedding. There, in the background, hung the painting of the mysterious green-eyed woman, still fresh, unaged by time. In another photo, Isadora stood next to a man wearing a signet ring, bearing an intricate H design. Could that have been a sign for Hargrave and Sons, or something else entirely? Through these old photographs, she sensed her grandmother's silent encouragement. "You can break the cycle. The painting was entrusted to you for a reason. The child in your womb deserves a life free from corruption." Summoning fresh resolve, Charlotte decided that she would not let fear dictate her choices. Morning arrived, and with it, a phone call from Adrian Holloway. "We've been analyzing what you sent us," he said. "We have a philanthropic legal team that's prepared to help if you're willing to reveal the entire story to them. Our foundation has been fighting the Hargrave and Sons network for decades. We built alliances within the federal justice system too." Adrian's offer felt like a lifeline. Charlotte weighed his words carefully. She asked if her identity and that of her child could be protected. Adrian assured her they had ways to secure anonymity, at least while building a case. She agreed to meet with him. Later that day, she visited the Foundation's downtown offices. Unlike the opulence of the Hargrave Club, the Holloway Foundation exuded a humble yet professional vibe. Adrian introduced her to a team of lawyers and investigators who specialized in white-collar crimes. One of them, Jane Moriarty, had successfully prosecuted members of the Hargrave and Sons network in the past. Jane explained that going public with the ledger's details was crucial for building a strong case. She also warned Charlotte that once she took this step, the threat level would escalate. However, Jane promised to fast-track Charlotte into a protective arrangement, even if it meant relocating her temporarily. Throughout this conversation, Charlotte's heart pounded with both fear and determination. She thought of the unborn child she carried. Her child deserved a future untainted by bribery or blackmail. She could end the cycle right here. She signed a preliminary agreement, handing over digital copies of the ledger to the Holloway Foundation team. They promised to coordinate with federal agents discreetly. "You're doing the right thing," Adrian assured her. "Theodore Jacobs intended for these secrets to see the light. You're simply fulfilling that mission." That evening, Charlotte returned to the house, her last night there, she suspected. She planned to pack her essentials and move to a safe location arranged by the Foundation. Leonard awaited her in the living room, tension carved into his features. "I heard you met with Adrian Holloway," he said, voice hollow. She nodded. "Yes, I gave him the ledgers. They're building a legal case." Leonard's eyes widened in alarm. "You just signed our death warrant." He paced, mind racing. "Hargrave and Sons won't let you walk away if you expose them." She lifted her chin, defiance in her stare. "The only way to defeat them is to bring them to light. Hiding from the truth only enables them." His lips trembled. "I won't let them hurt you, or our child." "You can help," she said, voice softening. "Testify. Work with the Foundation. Reveal everything you know about their operation. It's the only chance to protect us for real." Leonard hesitated, conflicted. Then, in a barely audible tone, he said, "I'll do it. I'll come clean." He pulled her into a tentative embrace. Charlotte's eyes watered, remembering the warmth they used to share. For a fleeting moment, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could salvage something from the wreckage. In the dead of night, Charlotte's phone rang. She answered drowsily, hearing Amelia's urgent voice. "You've made a huge mistake," she hissed. "Hargrave and Sons knows you've handed over the documents. They plan to make an example of you and Leonard." Charlotte's heart leapt. "How do you know?" Amelia's voice quivered. "Because they reached out to me, demanding I lure you into a trap. I refused, but I don't know what's next. You need to run immediately." Despite her anger toward Amelia, Charlotte recognized genuine fear. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm leaving the country," Amelia said, voice tight. "I suggest you do the same. But if you care about Leonard, get him out too." Charlotte ended the call, adrenaline flooding her system. She shook Leonard awake, explaining Amelia's warning. He grabbed his phone and saw multiple missed calls and threatening messages. "They're serious," he muttered. "We have to go now." Together, they hastily packed a small bag. Charlotte's hands trembled as she considered the baby clothes she'd lovingly folded. She snatched them, refusing to abandon hope for a future. Within minutes, they fled the house, uncertain of their destination but determined to stay alive. They drove through the night, headlights carving a path along deserted highways. Leonard directed them to a remote cabin he once rented for a private retreat in the mountains. En route, Charlotte updated Adrian Holloway. He assured her that federal agents would move quickly, but also warned her to remain hidden until they could set up secure protection. Exhaustion seeped into her bones, but fear kept her awake. Every passing car felt like a potential threat. In the back of her mind, she wondered if Amelia had truly left the country, or if the mistress had another angle. Yet, for now, the immediate danger overshadowed personal grievances. Upon reaching the cabin, they locked the doors and closed the blinds. The chill mountain air seeped through the thin walls, but Charlotte felt a small measure of relief. Here, at least, they weren't easily traced. Early morning brought a flurry of activity. Texts from Adrian, calls from Brandon Faulkner, updates from the Foundation's legal team. An anonymous tip had led the authorities to investigate certain executives connected to Hargrave and Sons. High-profile arrests were already in motion in multiple cities. Charlotte clung to that hope like a lifeline. Maybe they would be safe soon. 2 days later, the federal agents arrived at the cabin. Charlotte and Leonard were escorted to a secure facility for debriefing. Leonard supplied everything he knew about the modern version of Hargrave and Sons: names, accounts, meetings. Combined with the historical ledgers from Theodore Jacobs, the case was ironclad. The FBI prepared to dismantle the organization. Word came that Amelia Delacroix was detained at the airport, attempting to board a private jet. She claimed she was fleeing for her life, not evading justice. The authorities, however, needed her testimony as well. In exchange for leniency, Amelia agreed to corroborate Leonard's story. All loose ends began to knot together into a comprehensive takedown. Despite her heartbreak, Charlotte found a small sense of gratitude that Amelia cooperated. Perhaps the mistress also deserved a chance to redeem herself. 6 months later, Charlotte sat in a modest, sunlit house, provided by the Witness Protection Program. Her belly was no longer just a gentle curve. She was days away from giving birth. Leonard, following his cooperation, received a reduced penalty probation under strict supervision. They lived under new identities, but at least they were free from the immediate threat of Hargrave and Sons. The day the baby arrived, an early morning in spring, Charlotte felt a rush of emotions so profound it eclipsed all the fear and betrayal of the past. Holding her tiny daughter, she whispered soft assurances of a life unshackled by darkness. Leonard, tears streaming, pressed a gentle kiss to the baby's forehead. She saw in his eyes a genuine resolve to atone for his mistakes. He vowed never to let greed or secrets endanger their family again. Far away, the original Theodore Jacobs painting hung in the private collection of the government's evidence archives. The hidden parchment, once a dire secret, had shattered the power of a corrupt organization. Theodore Jacobs's legacy, as well as the Armstrong family's trust in honesty, had finally found resolution. Every choice Charlotte made, selling a single painting, uncovering a century-old ledger, confronting her husband's infidelity, brought her to a crossroads between secrecy and truth. That painting, steeped in hidden records of corruption, ultimately exposed a dangerous syndicate. Through betrayal and fear, Charlotte and Leonard emerged with a fresh resolve to protect their child's future. Their journey reveals the power of confronting injustice head-on, even when the cost is steep. Thank you for joining us on this tumultuous saga of hidden legacies, family betrayal, and the unwavering resilience of a pregnant wife who dared to seek the truth. If you found this story gripping and want more high-stakes drama, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and be sure to subscribe for more compelling narratives. Spread the word so others can uncover the secrets within this incredible tale.